6 weeks after burying a husband who never learned gentleness and a baby who never learned breath, she stood behind a wooden table at the Saturday market. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, arranging loaves, cutting twine, nudging coins into a small tin with a tiny click that marked each sale. People came and went without eyes. They did not speak to her. They did not meet her gaze. Bread taken, coins dropped. No thank you. No warmth. She had become a shadow among barrels of apples and bushels of greens, and the scent of warm bread that never touched her loneliness. The town had called it charity when the boarding house took her in. The girls called it something else. They laughed when her back turned and stared when she passed through doorways. Fat widow. Poor thing. Must have broken God's heart to make him turn his face like that. Norah cut another length of twine and tied it with a neat knot. The air lilted with midsummer heat. Somewhere, a child laughed. A horse clopped slowly by. Then a sound rose that cleaved through everything. A baby's cry, thin and failing, like a torn reed caught in the wind. The market stilled. Heads turned. A man stumbled into view. Broad-shouldered, unshaven, eyes bloodshot and ragged with sleep loss. His shirt was stained dark at the chest, his hands trembling as he held a bundle swaddled in a threadbare blanket. "Please," he said. Voice cracked in the middle. "Somebody help. She won't eat." No one moved. "I've been to every wet nurse in 3 counties, he said, breath hitching. None would take her. Her mother, he swallowed. She died 3 weeks ago. Please. Men looked away. Women shifted backward. The baby's cry thinned to a whisper, like it had run out of places to go. Old Martha, the herb seller, lifted her chin and pointed at Norah. "That one," she said. "The widow. She lost her babe a month back. She might still have milk." Every head turned. Norah's fingers stilled over a loaf. For a moment, she felt the earth tilt under her feet. The man crossed the square toward her, boots heavy, breath shallow, desperation walking beside him. When he stopped in front of her table, she saw the rest. Grief like a wound behind his eyes, anger trying to hold it all together. "Can you nurse her just once?" he asked, voice nearly gone. "Please." "I'll pay anything." Before Norah could speak, laughter cracked behind her, sharp and bright like broken glass. "The fat widow?" A boarding house girl said. She couldn't even keep her own baby alive. "Built like that, and no milk that mattered," another said. "Cursed." The man spun toward them, fist rising like a spark from dry tinder. Norah reached out and caught his forearm. Heat and strength under her palm. A tremor of held-back thunder. "Don't," she said softly. He looked down at her, at the hand holding him back. "They're not worth it," she whispered. "Please, don't." He breathed like a bellows slowing, then unclenched. When he turned back, his voice was rough with restraint. "Will you help?" Norah looked at the baby. So small, skin ashy, breath shallow. She saw her own daughter again in memory, blue and quiet, heavy with a stillness that had broken her bones. "Yes," Norah said. "Bring her to the boarding house. 2 streets over. Her throat closed and opened again. "I'll try." Relief washed across his face like rain on drought earth. "Thank you," he said, and the words sounded like a prayer. They walked through the gauntlet of whispers. Words followed them, sticky and mean. Unmarried, shameless, desperate. She kept her eyes forward. At the steps, he paused. "I don't even know your name," he said. "Norah." "Thomas Hayes," he answered. "Thank you for not turning away." Up the narrow stairs into her small attic room, where the light was thin and the bed clean, and there was nothing left of her life except a brush and a Bible and the space grief had hollowed out. "Sit," she said. He knelt. She took the baby. So light, too light. Her own fingers, clumsy with shaking, unbuttoned the top of her dress. She brought the baby close. At first, there was nothing. The tiny mouth searched, fell away, returned, then latched. The sound of sucking was so quiet, she might have imagined it. "She's—" Thomas choked on a half-sob, half-laugh. "She's drinking." Norah's vision blurred. For weeks, her body had made milk for a little mouth that would never open. Now, a little mouth drank because she was still here. Tears ran hot over the smooth curve of the baby's head and disappeared into the blanket. Thomas curled on the floor beside her chair and wept into his hands. The room held the sound gently. When the baby finished, her color was less gray, her breath deeper, a tiny fist unfurling like a leaf. "She'll need to eat again," Norah said. "In a few hours. Can I bring her back?" His voice was small. "Please." Norah hesitated, thinking of the matron's sharp eyes, the girl's hungry gossip. Then she looked at the baby, at the life warming back into her like sunrise. "Yes," she said. He came back before sunset. The boarding house kitchen breathed with whispers shaped like knives. Norah climbed the stairs without hearing them. In the hush of the little attic, Grace, he said her name now, drank, and the world steadied around the rhythm of a tiny jaw. "I need to ask you something," Thomas said at last, voice low. "Come to my ranch, just for a while. Proper wages, your own room. I can't do this alone anymore. Riding to town twice a day. The ranch is falling apart. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time since Sarah." The name broke. He steadied. "I need help." "The town will talk," Norah said. "They already do," he answered. "And it didn't stop my wife from dying when no one would come. I don't care anymore." He looked at her as if the rest of his life depended on it. "Will you come?" Norah thought of narrow stairs, of rooms that smelled like boiled cabbage and envy, of laughter behind doors and silence at tables, of how the baby's breath had deepened against her skin. "I'll come," she said. In the morning, the matron stood like a gate. "You owe 3 months' room and board," she said. $50. Norah's stomach dropped. Thomas's hand went to his wallet. "60, he said, laying the bills on the counter. "For the debt, and for the inconvenience of watching her leave stronger than she came." He turned to Norah. "You're free." They rode out under a sky so big it made small things honest. The ranch rose out of long grass and fence lines, solid house, sturdy barn, fields that remembered better days. Up close, chaos met them on the porch, laundry in a defeat of piles, chickens, staging a minor rebellion, a garden turning itself back into wild. "It's not bad," Norah said softly. "It's grief." He looked at her, startled. Then something in him loosened. "Your room is off the kitchen," he said. "Lock on the inside." It was small and square and perfect. A bed with a real mattress. A window set to catch the late light. The kind of safe that made a person realize how long they had not felt safe. Norah nursed Grace and then, because her hands did not know idleness anymore, she washed dishes until the counters remembered they were wood. She swept grit into a small mountain and took it outside to let the wind worry it into nothing. She folded laundry into stacks that looked like dignity. When Thomas came in, he stopped in the doorway. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said, not looking up. "I needed to." He picked up a clean rag. "Then I'll help." That night, Grace slept between them in her cradle, a small moon tugging their tides to the same quiet shore. The house made a different kind of sound, one that felt like exhale. 2 weeks remade the ranch. Chickens learned their names again. Norah rebuilt the coop with sure, steady blows. Dust rose and settled the way truth does when it's finally spoken aloud. The garden came back from the edge, rose reappearing under her hands, green insisting on itself. Thomas mended what 2 hands could, dawn to dark, shoulders a map of labor. "You're not helpless," she said one afternoon. Dirt under her fingernails, sun on her neck, "and neither am I. Don't mistake soft for weak." He looked at her for a long time. "I never did." Something changed in the air, subtle as a season. Then Grace cried and the moment tucked itself away like a letter in a pocket. Word traveled faster than wagons. In town, tongues wagged themselves sore. At the ranch, 2 hired men rode up with cheap whiskey on their breath and cheaper words in their mouths. "She's a big one said, smirking toward the garden. "Bet she eats more than she's worth." Thomas stilled. "What did you say?" "It was a joke, boss." "Get off my land." They laughed, then saw that he wasn't. "Come on. You insult the woman who saved my daughter," he said quietly. "And you expect a day's wages? Leave. Don't come back." They went, the way men do who have learned too late to recognize a line. That evening, Grace spit milk across Norah's only good dress, and they stood shoulder to shoulder. At the wash basin, hands close in the soapy water, fingertips brushing like a question. "Norah," he said. "Yes." He didn't finish. Grace did what babies do. She cried, and the moment folded itself small and waited. Night found them on the porch steps. The sky poured full of stars. "My wife died hating me," Thomas said, voice athread. Norah turned her face toward the shape of him in the dark. "Not hating me exactly," he went on, "but scared. The midwife wouldn't come because I'd laid the preacher out the week before. For saying something cruel when Sarah's time came, the town turned its face. I held her hand and could not do a thing. When Grace finally cried, Sarah was already gone." He breathed, jagged. "Sometimes I think she blamed me for having a temper in a place that loves to be cruel." Norah found his hand in the dark. "You didn't kill her," she said. "The town did. I should have controlled myself. And the preacher should have controlled his tongue." Silence widened, soft as a blanket. "My husband didn't die in an accident," Norah said. "He died the way he lived, mean and careless. He beat his horse when it wouldn't move. It kicked him in the head. People called it tragedy." Her voice steadied. "I called it relief." He turned toward her then, the night listening. "You didn't kill your baby, Norah. How can you know?" "Because you saved mine." Something inside her, locked and dark, unlatched. She rested her head against his shoulder, and they sat until the horizon began to think about light. 3 weeks had passed since Norah came. Grace had the good weight of a baby who believes in tomorrow. The house had the good order of a place used by people who respect one another. The ranch breathed, which is when the trouble came back wearing Sunday gloves. A carriage rolled in from town. Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house, the preacher's wife, and a third woman with a mouth like a rulebook. "We've come to speak with Mr. Hayes," the preacher's wife said. "He isn't here? Pity. We'll speak to you." Norah stood among the neat rows she'd rescued from weeds. Dirt clung to her palms. Her heart beat steady. "It's sinful," the woman went on, eyes small with certainty. "An unmarried woman living in a man's house." "I have my own room," Norah said. "That isn't the point. Appearances matter." "We're here to take you back," Mrs. Henderson said, sweet as a trap. "Before you do more harm, I'm not going back. You owe." "Her debt is paid," Thomas said, his voice arriving before his boots as he came up the lane. "And her presence here is my business." Hoofbeats thundered. The 2 fired ranch hands reappeared, drunk and looking for an easy victory. They swung down, swagger leaning hard into malice. "We came for what we're owed," one said, eyes crawling over Norah. "Boss fired us over you." "I'll pay you to leave," Norah said, stepping back, calculating the doorway, the baby inside. "We don't want money." A grin peeled back across yellow teeth. "We want compensation." He lunged. Norah screamed. A gunshot split the afternoon. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Thomas stood 20 feet away, rifle steady, eyes blazing with a fury that had finally found its righteous work. "Take your hands off her." The man let go so fast, Norah nearly fell. The rifle didn't waver. "I told you what would happen if you came back," Thomas said, voice very calm. "Now get on your horses and ride. If I see you on my land again, I won't aim for the sky." They scrambled, cursing beneath their breath, and fled. Thomas lowered the rifle and crossed the distance in 3 strides, his hands trembling as they cupped Norah's face, counting bruises that weren't there. "Are you hurt?" "I'm all right," she said, breath hitching. I'm all right. The town women stood rigid by their carriage, faces pinched, lace quivering. You brought this to my door, Thomas said to them, voice gone cold. You came to shame her and nearly got her hurt. We only meant, the preacher's wife started. To save appearances, he finished. Get off my land. They went, scandal clattering in the wheels. He pulled Norah against him then, as if his arms were the only safe place left in the world. When I heard you scream, he whispered into her hair, I thought God meant to take everything. I'm here, she said. I'm safe. He leaned back enough to see her face. Something fierce and simple crossed his own. I can't pretend anymore, he said. You're not just the woman who saved my child. You are the woman who saved me. His thumb traced the line of her cheek. I love you, Norah. Her answer rose like a tide coming home. I love you too. Marry me, he said. Not someday. Now. Before anyone tries to write our story for us, she nodded, tears bright. Yes. They rose before dawn the next morning. The sky was a pale promise. Grace slept, bundled and warm between them on the wagon seat, as the town's church bells rang across Sunday clothes and clean faces. The courthouse steps were crowded by the time they pulled up. The sheriff pushed through with Mrs. Henderson at his elbow, triumph tight in her mouth. Thomas Hayes, the sheriff said. There's a complaint. Unmarried cohabitation. Town ordinance. Thomas's hand found Norah's. We're here to be married, he said. Right now. The judge appeared in the doorway, adjusting his spectacles. Witnesses? Me, old Martha said, elbowing through like a ship breaking ice. The blacksmith raised his hand. I will. Mrs. Henderson sputtered. This is indecent. She's trapping. Nobody's trapping anyone, Norah said clearly to the gathered faces. I choose him. He chooses me. The judge opened his book. Thomas Hayes, do you take this woman? I do. Norah, do you take this man? I do. By the power vested in me. The book snapped shut. Husband and wife. Thomas kissed her, simple and certain, unashamed. The crowd gasped, the way crowds do when they are seeing something they didn't give permission for. When he turned, his arms settled around Norah, like it had always been meant to be. She is my wife, he said, voice carrying. She saved my daughter when you all looked away. She saved my home. She saved me from the kind of grief that eats a man from the inside. If you must say something, say that. Silence rustled, then thinned. The sheriff tipped his hat. Complaint dismissed. Thomas helped Norah into the wagon. Before he sat, he stood tall on the seat and looked out over the faces that had tried to make their lives small. One more thing, he said, quiet and iron. Anyone who insults my wife insults me. Anyone who threatens her threatens my family, and I protect my family. They drove away into a sky that had remembered how to be blue. At home, the sun laid gold across the porch, and the house breathed easy. Thomas lifted Norah down, then took Grace from her arms and rested the baby against his chest. The three of them caught in a light that made everything look like a beginning. Mrs. Hayes, he said, and grinned like a man surprised by joy. She laughed, hand to her mouth, tears warm and welcome. I like the sound of that. They ate supper at a clean table. The fire crackled as if it knew it was lighting a celebration. Grace slept sweetly, a fist tucked under her cheek. After, they sat on the porch steps and watched the stars come one by one until the sky was full of them. Are you happy? He asked. Norah looked at the man who had learned to harness his anger for protection instead of punishment. She thought of the garden rose, the neat coop, the mended fence, the windows that now let in light without letting in the cold. She thought of Grace's soft breath and the way the house had begun to smell like bread again. I am, she said. I am good, he murmured, his shoulder warm against hers. Because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. They sat there long after the world went quiet, their hands threaded together, their shadows overlapping on the porch boards. Two people the town had decided were not enough, had found one another and discovered they were more than their grief, more than their bodies, more than their reputations. A baby had found milk and a future. A ranch had found hands and hope. And the night settled soft around a new family that didn't ask permission to exist. It just did. Norah leaned her head to his shoulder. Grace sighed in her cradle like a contented little storm finally come to rest. "We saved each other," Thomas said. "We did," Norah whispered. "The stars listened and kept their counsel."